Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Did the Lakers hit rock bottom Wednesday night against Miami? They better hope so. What's next?
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, this one is always going to be free and never put behind a paywall because, Andy, that would rob all the people watching on Locked On Lakers on YouTube, for example, of the opportunity to rail against a team that was absolutely, positively atrocious on Wednesday night. They lose 110-96 to a Miami team playing without Jimmy Butler, without which Martin is theirs? Caleb Martin. A somewhat shorthanded Miami team, and were terrible. I mean, the Lakers were missing players of their own. Obviously, Gabe Vincent is out. Rui Hachimura missed the game, as did D'Angelo Russell. But this was an absolutely hideous performance from the Lakers. We're going to unpack all of it because this has potential implications, I think, going forward in a big way. I want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Andy, this was one of those games that was so bad the Lakers got filleted, absolutely crushed on their home television station when it was done. James Worthy, Robert Horry taking this team to task as well they should have, because if your name is not Anthony Davis, and I will give Austin Reaves a pass because he played really effing hard.
I would actually give Max Christie and Christian Wood passes as well. I thought they both played. They certainly did their jobs. They did their jobs.
And showed up and played hard, if nothing else. Christie missed too many shots, but he was putting in the effort. And I thought Wood gets to drive home without taking sniper fire from this or other podcast.
Christie and Wood deserve at least some mention of, I think they did their jobs. A lot of other guys on this team did not.
This was one of the worst basketball games I've seen a Lakers team play. And I watched, along with you, all those terrible years, in between the Kobe years and the Anthony Davis years, the LeBron years. There were some awful games there. This was as bad as any of them.
But here's the difference, though. Like some of those games, especially once the Lakers just somewhat embrace the idea of we are going to have these young players, we're going to treat them like a young team and just admit this is who they are.
Yep.
Those games, at least, you could see some degree of purpose to them because you're watching for the potential of Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, D'Angelo Russell back then, Josh Hart, Larry Nance Jr. down the line. This game was absolutely rudderless from the Lakers as a collective. To put this in perspective, they finished the first quarter with 10 turnovers, which tied a franchise record for turnovers in the first quarter of any game. I didn't realize they even kept.
If your goal is point shaving, it is hard to turn the ball over 10 times in a quarter.
I mean, they had 6 in the first 6 minutes. Like in the first quarter, there's this sequence where Taurean Prince fumbled the ball off his foot in a dribble handoff attempt with AD, which then led to LeBron badly fouling Tyler Hero on a 3, just flying into him. Vando then turned the ball over, trying to get it to Taurean Prince, I believe on an inbound. It got fumbled. Then Vando turned the ball over, trying to kick it out from the baseline because, and this is something we'll talk about either during this show or the show for Friday, he was really in that first quarter trying his damnedest not to put up a shot and basically turned the ball over because he was trying to avoid actually scoring. That led to a Miami turnover. And moments like that, and there were so damn many of them in this game, were, as AD said afterwards, incredibly deflating. How many times they just kept digging themselves partially out of a hole and then saying, where do we put that shovel? Because let's start digging more.
Start digging again. We climb out a little bit, and they did. But like, look, I want to spend some time on the supporting cast here because they were really bad. We're going to get to that before the end of the show. We're going to get to the shooting before the end of the show. The Lakers were 4 of 30. If you were a pitcher, back in the days where pitchers could hit, that is a bad average for pitchers. 13.3%.
Put this in perspective, too. A stat that I saw from our guy, Dan Wojcicki, friend of the show, covers the team for the LA Times. The Lakers are the first team this season with 20-plus turnovers and to shoot less than 15% from 3.
Out there making history. Good job, guys.
That's shocking.
But I want to start with LeBron because as the supporting cast, which again was worthy of conversation and problematic, and the injuries, and Darvin Ham said some stuff after this game that was really problematic. And the vibe around this team is clearly way off. And people are not speaking the same language and not rowing in the same direction. LeBron was bad in this game and looked fairly well checked out after about the first 6 minutes. There is a question as to whether or not that is related to the illness that he has been fighting. He looked very tired and all of that. So maybe it's that. Maybe it is checking out on something a little more substantial. But 12 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 turnovers, could have been way more than that. Missed 12 of 18 shots. All 6 of his three-pointers did not get to the free throw line. This was and defensively was awful. I mean, just one of the main culprits in terms of not getting back, against the break as Miami would push, losing his guy, standing still, all of these things that I am fairly sure the Lakers coaching staff is encouraging their team not to do. LeBron was a main culprit of this. This was as bad a LeBron game as you can get. Whatever the explanation is, this was as bad as it gets.
Well, I don't know what the explanation is because
Right,
LeBron left the game without talking to any media. So no idea what the hell the explanation was. Put in perspective how bad he played. This is the lowest scoring game he's had playing 35 plus minutes since 2016. It's like one of his lowest minutes per scoring games of his entire career. You mentioned the defense. There was about 4 minutes left in the game, and LeBron had just hit a layup, putting the game within 10. And then Josh Richardson hits a 3, and he's LeBron's guy. And LeBron on that sequence is just wandering in no man's land, doing nothing. I tweeted out during this game at Cam Brothers, like acknowledging maybe he is still dealing with what the team termed as a non-COVID illness, but his body language reeked of disinterest. And I've talked before about how this slide since the IST, LeBron has the worst. Maybe things have changed tonight because there were a lot of bad performances, but
might have caught him.
LeBron had the worst net rating on this team. Like the Lakers were actually positive net rating with LeBron off the court. That has not happened in this era. And, say this again, because I've mentioned this every time I've pointed it out over the last couple of weeks. I'm not saying this to put the slide on LeBron, but I will say I do think this slide is connected to LeBron. I think his defense has been casual, to put it kindly, during a lot of this period. He has offensively been off. He is struggling around the rim. I know he takes contact and he could get more calls, but there are times where he's missing shots that you're LeBron, you're supposed to be making these. And more importantly, if this team is still going to be anchored around LeBron to the degree that it is, even if it is clearly now Anthony Davis's team, LeBron still needs to hit these shots. He's not hitting them.
It's the difference between LeBron sort of post IST and pre is that pre he was playing at this sort of cosmic borderline MVP level, and post has not, and the rest of the roster has not been able to compensate. And so let's talk more about LeBron, more about what Darvin said after the game, and more about the supporting cast issues, because a lot of it's intertwined. So we'll get to it next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetterHelp, and we've just finished up December and the home stretch of all of the holidays, which can be fun for a lot of people, but they can be very depressing for many other people. There's an economic toll that comes with these celebrations. There's family often that you spend a lot of time around that you don't always get along with. There's a lot that can feel stressful about looking ahead to a brand new year, and therapy can be a bright spot amidst all the anxiety and the uncertainty, something that you can look forward to actually make you feel more centered and grounded, give you tools to help you manage everything going on. I can personally speak to how much therapy helped me during a really difficult period in my life for me and my family. Sitting down, talking with a professional was huge. And BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, accessible anywhere, 100% online, no waiting rooms, no traffic. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. And if things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. So if you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can help you get there. So visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
You know, this show, Andy, it's also brought to you by Logix. You get a lot of in-depth analysis and hot takes on this program. Well, let me give you my hottest take of the day. The best lineup in LA and the surrounding areas right now is the lineup of auto loans at Logix. They start off at the top with my favorites, the proven and dependable new and used vehicle loans. You can count on these guys to give you low rates and save you big time bucks. Next up, they've got an exciting new rookie sensation in their electric vehicle loans with super low rates and flexible payment terms. Rounding out the lineup, it's their auto refinancing and lease buyout loans. With these guys, you could lower your monthly payments and get on the road to owning your car faster. Look, I know it's a hot take, but seriously, no one can beat the lineup at Logix. So visit your local Logix branch right here in LA and the surrounding areas and let one of their amazing team members help you, or just go apply online in minutes at logixbanking.com/car. That's LOGIX banking.com/car. So, as you noted, Andy, LeBron left the game on Wednesday without speaking to the media, which is something that you do if you are sick. If you're really not feeling well, that would be a normal reaction. You leave without talking to the media. It would also be a reaction if you just want to make sure you don't say anything necessarily that you don't want to, or to get people start to asking the question as LeBron, everything LeBron does is dissected, and people will analyze,
Including, by the way, not talking to the media.
Not talking to the media, right? So
not talking to the media is just as much sending a message as anything you might say.
An active choice until he comes back and says, look, I was sick. I didn't, I needed to get in bed as fast as possible. He could clarify that tomorrow or Friday before the game. Next time he talks to the media, we'll see. But at the very least, Andy, is indicative of the vibes around the team. And Austin Reaves said after the game, the vibes are way off, as they should be, because we're losing, and we're losing bad. And on Wednesday, they were losing in really embarrassing ways. Look, I have Taurean Prince, I think overall has played pretty well over the course of the season. I know he is the focus of a lot of anger from Lakers fans. He was god awful, in a childlike kind of can't hold on to the basketball, missed all of his shots, finished with no points. And look, it happens to everyone, but between him and Cam Reddish, in 48 minutes, they got no points.
Cam Reddish in this game had more turnovers, 4, and fouls, 2, than shot attempts. He took 1 shot attempt in this game, which
3-pointer in the first minute, 2 minutes of the game.
I mean, like, that is a shell of, like, forget like Cam Reddish as a player. Like, that is a shell of how it's always seemed like he sees himself offensively as a player. Like, I don't think I've ever seen Cam Reddish look this disinclined to score. Maybe he was terrified of touching the ball because it kept getting stripped and he kept losing it. But I mean, it was
just
shocking.
as a team. Look, Darvin after the game. Let's get into this because the supporting cast was an issue, a massive issue for the Lakers. Every player who played meaningful minutes for the Heat finished in double figures. The Lakers, as we mentioned, got 48 minutes of Cam Reddish and Taurean Prince got 0 points. Throw in 6 minutes for Jalen Hood-Schifino, who also didn't score and looked terrible. And I'll give him a bit of a pass because he shouldn't be in the game. Like, he's just not ready for it.
That sequence where Jaime Jaquez Jr. blocked him at the rim, given all of the recent kerfuffle about how well Jaquez has been playing for Miami and how the Lakers could have drafted Jaquez one spot ahead of where Miami took him, perhaps should have taken him, like all that. Like, it felt like the writer's room was just being cruel in that moment.
Really
like the symbolism and everything was like, it was so on the nose, it almost felt amateurish.
Yeah, I felt genuinely bad for Hood-Schifino, who really needs to be playing in with South Bay, getting 30 minutes a game there, 35 minutes a game with South Bay, and he can't because Gabe Vincent is injured and D'Angelo Russell is out, Rui Hachimura is out, and in significant ways, the Lakers and Darvin Ham's hands were tied in this game.
As opposed to in his pockets.
Hey-o!
I don't even care about the pockets thing, but it was right there.
It was just like lob slam.
Well, somebody had to make a basket in this game.
At least it wasn't a three. The Lakers were, Darvin said after the game, it's an interesting philosophical argument that, it is harder, on a team to lose 3 key members of a rotation than to have like one star out in Jimmy Butler. It's actually, it's an interesting debate. It's, and there's some truth to it. He said, Darvin, after the game, that the Lakers simply won't get any rhythm until they're healthy again.
His exact words were, we can't find any consistency until we get healthy. It's as simple as that. And then he went to talk about things that they need to do and steps they need to take and not get discouraged, blah, blah, blah. Like,
the issue, Andy, isn't whether or not he's 100% right or wrong or technically correct. Like, you said it on Twitter, like, he could be technically correct. Like, you can't get consistency while guys are this, but you can do something. Like, the messaging was so bad in that moment because Anthony Davis and Austin Reaves said the exact opposite thing when they were talking to the media.
It's bad messaging, even if it's just to fans, as opposed to what he's saying to these guys in the locker room. And maybe he's just trying not to tear into them publicly. But it's bad messaging because, again, even if technically true, like, there is some degree of truth to the idea that if you have guys in and out of the lineup, it's hard to be consistent. But this was the wrong game to say that, because you can control some degree of consistency through focus and through urgency. And the Lakers had none of that in this game. If the Lakers had played their asses off, like, you could just feel like they were leaving it all on the floor in this game, and they still end up losing. Like, quite frankly, Miami spent about 3.5 quarters being like, take this win from us. We are opening the door so many times.
The basketball gods were like, no, we're not letting you win this game.
Right. Like, it's not like they didn't have opportunities. Not like Miami played the game of their lives.
No, they were pretty bad.
Right. The first quarter of this game was dreadful and amateurish on both sides. But, like, this was the wrong game to say that, even if, again, there is some degree of truth to it, because you didn't play hard enough to earn that type of nuance, for lack of a better way of putting it. You didn't earn it tonight.
And I'll tell you the other thing that's really bad about that answer. And this is beyond just the optics for fans who already hate the guy. When players see that clip, and they will, and they see the quote, and they will, what it says is, this is not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not saying it's your fault either necessarily. Like, you know, these guys aren't playing up to the level. And like, you know what? Certain guys aren't. Like Jared Vanderbilt has not played well this year. He just hasn't. I know he's been injured and this, but he has not. Cam Reddish is backsliding. D'Angelo Russell started great, hasn't been great, wasn't great after that, sort of turned it around, but his role is diminished now. Austin Reaves got off to a terrible start. There really isn't anybody on the team that I would say has exceeded expectations, other than maybe Anthony Davis. But it says to the team, like, this is not on me. Like, I can't, we can't finish. What are we gonna do? Just hang out until Gabe Vincent returns? I mean, let's kind of keep on this, because I think the thing that stuck with Lakers fans as much as anything in this game was just how awful the offense looked against Miami's zone. I've never seen a team run more zone throughout a 48-minute NBA game than the Heat did in this one. It was unbelievable and was incredibly effective on so many levels. We'll cover it next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by FanDuel, and the NFL season is wrapping up. It's been exciting, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is really easy to use. A lot of different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. The best way to find popular parlays, obviously futures, over-unders, all sorts of really fun stuff. And just in case you didn't know, there are NBA options as well. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup.
It's interesting to me because Darvin generally has, I think, done a pretty good job with sort of messaging and being supportive of his players while still preaching accountability, still taking accountability. And it reminded me of something that we kind of touched on earlier this week, which was Darvin's greatest skill last year was as somebody who could keep the team together, have that that buy-in and prevent the group from fracturing under difficult circumstances. That, as you pointed out, isn't as valuable this year because the expectations have changed. Last year, he was keeping the team together, but it was easier because everyone knew that while Russ was here, like, we weren't going anywhere. Like, nothing can happen until this.
Well, he was also keeping them together through a period where, for the most part, even if you weren't fully blown away by Darvin in that first season, for the most part, there was a lot that just simply was not his fault. He walked into it. Therefore, the best you may be able to reasonably ask of him is to keep everybody focused and motivated because, he was not there when some of these decisions were made.
And then when Westbrook gets traded and they bring in the guys and, Vanderbilt and Hachimura and Russell and all that, there is no question that the composition of the team got significantly better. But the mental lift, the weight, this is not bagging on Russ. It's just structurally, it was untenable what was there. And it wasn't going to work until he was gone. And they fixed it in this way that all of a sudden it was like, wow, I'm sure in the locker room, they were like, this is a way better result than we ever would have expected. The weight goes off of the team. Suddenly they're playing free. They're enthusiastic and all that. D'Angelo Russell's back in town. He's, doing the ice water thing and all. This year, however, though, the expectations you come in and are so different that the weight is playing badly. There is no impediment to this team succeeding unless they lose games. And depending on how you look at it, the coaching staff isn't good enough to get them where they want to go.
Well, I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, just the idea of post-deadline last year, what the team looked like then and what they're looking like now. And as much as obviously Darvin deserves credit for keeping them together up to the point of the deadline, because that is not easy, and then keeping them together during a period where they had to fight uphill, a lot of it without LeBron, some of it without D'Angelo Russell, figuring a lot of stuff out on the fly. There is credit that goes to players, but credit goes to the coach as well, just because the blame would go to the coach when things don't go well. But there was also an urgency during that period that, when you look back on it, may have been fueling them in ways that maybe I was about to say become impossible to replicate, but the way things are going right now, maybe we'll end up testing that theory about whether you could replicate it again. But there may have been some degree of urgency that was elevating everybody a little bit past their station, just because, again, that was an unfakeable feeling. Like, it is more difficult to convince yourself that things are that desperate in mid to late December or early January, even if, practically speaking, Austin Reaves talked about afterwards, like, the urgency should be high every game because you want to win every game. But the bottom line beyond that part of it is, the first year you might have more patience from Darvin as a first-year head coach, but also more sort of tolerance of the things that he may be learning on the job, or indecisions or slow adjustments, because it's like the guy kind of walked into a bleep storm and he had to navigate through a bleep storm. This season was not set up to be a bleep storm.
No.
And you are expecting him to be guiding you, not just through his voice and temperament, but through his actual decisions. And in a lot of ways, it feels like he's guiding them through indecision, because he doesn't seem to know what he wants and how to get it beyond the problems of injury.
Right. Well, and look, the injuries, that the injuries are partially what got Austin Reaves back in the starting lineup. He started the game. We talk about it. It is not easy to put Reaves and LeBron in the same starting lineup when Russell and Vincent are both hurt, because they are the only two ball handlers on the roster. He put Reaves back into the starting lineup. The results were essentially the same. Once Miami went to the zone, at the very least, the offense cratered. The Lakers got off to a good start, pick and rolls with LeBron and Austin Reaves. Miami went to a zone. That was the end of that.
Christie talked after the game about how Miami communicated extremely well during those zones, and it sounded like they communicated better how to run them than the Lakers communicated how to break them.
And to some degree, it's like, I understand, like, you get the ball in the middle of the zone. There are ways to attack in this, but, like, to some degree, one of the tried and true way of forcing teams to get out of a zone is because you hit some outside shots and you make them have to break that defense.
And you missed D'Lo there for the outside shooting. You missed Rui because he's one of the best. He's one of the best at relocating on this team.
4 of 30. 4 of 30. And that is those are deflating numbers. You start adding that to the turnovers and all that stuff, and it's like they are so out of sorts. And it is. I do not blame all of this on the coaching staff, because the injuries and the continuities is a real thing. I think a lot of people, us, and certainly me, and definitely the front office, I think maybe overestimated a little bit of what this roster was coming into the season. We haven't really gotten a chance to see it, but I had some skepticism of Hachimura, for example. But broadly speaking, I think everybody was looked at the team like they looked like they got better. They went to the Western Conference Finals last year. It's possible we all overestimated a little bit. The players have not performed to the level they were supposed to, but I just think it is also hard to argue that, to the extent that the coach influences all of these things, player performance, whatever, and team, that Darvin has helped. He is not the only problem, but he has hardly been the solution.
No. And again, that they have seemingly regressed during this period since the IST, also coming at a time where Darvin, I had been more cautiously optimistic about the lineup change, and I certainly understood the philosophy behind it and the necessity behind it, because the defense, as much as the offense has often been terrible, I think the defense has been more problematic. Anthony Davis talked after the game about how the attention to details part of this has been a lot defensively.
On both ends on Wednesday, just because the attention, Darvin's made the point, is correct. The attention to detail to break a zone is higher. But I think Wednesday was, though, when you talk about the problems with the defense, Wednesday was a perfect example of how catastrophically bad offense compromises your defense in ways that are.
Well, the point I was going to bring up wasn't even to say which has been more of a problem in this game or period, but the idea that if you go out on a limb the way Darvin did there, in a way that has a lot of people going, wait, that's what you decided to do, and it doesn't work during this period of a slide, that makes it easier for certainly fans, but maybe even players, to start doubting what exactly is going on, because it has felt at times like things have been made more complicated, even going back to training camp and all of a sudden implementing a 5-out offense when you just went to the Western Conference Finals playing 4-out, and you're talking so much about continuity. Things like that compound on top of each other. Maybe individually they aren't a big deal, but they can start to compound on top of each other.
Yeah, and when you have to consider your changes to your lineup changes carefully, because you need to make them when they need to be made. But if you make too many of them, you start to lose credibility because it looks like you're throwing darts. Lots to talk about. This is probably the worst way the Lakers could start this critical stretch of 11 games in LA over their next 12. It doesn't get a whole lot easier. Memphis is starting to play a little bit better with Ja Morant back there in on Friday, and it's the Clippers who are rolling on Sunday. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 22,000 angry Lakers fans. We will be back for Friday's show. Get you ready for that game. And of course, keep dissecting what is going wrong with this team and what might be done to fix it. We'll see everybody tomorrow.